Good morning and welcome to Real Human Design Stories, where we share real-life stories of how human design has helped our guests know themselves on a deep, transformative level. Whether you're joining us live here during Sunday Story Hour in my Facebook group or catching this on your favorite podcast platform on Mondays, you'll be able to find all the details you need in the show notes or the Facebook comments. Human design helps us to differentiate between what is ours and what is conditioning. By knowing and trusting ourselves, we develop deeper, more honest relationships and unlock our true gifts. I'm Kathy Bashanko, and my guest this week is Natalie Collins, a 3/5 Ego-Projected Projector, right angle cross of the unexpected. And I'm really excited to talk to Natalie. Nova Ohm was talking about you on her story on her podcast episode that she did and hooked us up. And I'm really excited to learn all about this crazy, rare ego-projected authority and about the fun stuff that you're doing. And so welcome. I'd love if you just start off by telling us your exciting or not exciting, whatever it is, your human design story.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And I have quite the story of how I came to human design, but I'd like to share first off what it really felt like to feel my inner authority for the first time. Being an ego projector, it's the rarest of all of the inner authorities. And I don't say that to be like a special little unicorn. It's actually really challenging to find any good information on being an ego projector that I really resonate with and that makes sense to me. And our entire little ego projector community feels the same way about it.
So you're like 0.5%, right? Isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's even more rare than reflectors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to find good information on reflectors as it is as well. So it's this whole new world of what is this? So when I was introduced to human design, I was actually initiated by an emotional manifestor who was a client at the time. I'm a business coach, and I was doing business coaching with her, and she was like, "Have you ever heard of human design?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "This is right up your alley. You have to do this." It's like, and that just snowballed my initiation with this. I have been gung-ho studying it almost daily for the past 8 years, ever since I was introduced to this. So it's been quite a trip, quite a ride, as Ra calls it, with this. And when I was introduced to human design and started looking into what it means to have an ego authority, I realized that there was this one key moment in my life that changed everything for me. And that was me connecting into my inner authority. And so what that key moment was, is I was in a really miserable relationship, I should say. It wasn't horrible, but I was miserable, and I couldn't pinpoint what all of these things were that was causing me to be so miserable, because from the outside looking in, I had a pretty good life. I had, the 2 children, I had the nice house not with the white picket fence, but it might as well have had a white picket fence on it. And I had all of the physical things that you could have asked for, but something was deeply, deeply, deeply missing from my life, and I was miserable. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't really get to it. And so I started on a health journey because I was also overweight. I did not feel comfortable in my own body. And I started eating a lot healthier, and I dropped weight. I got to the point where I felt really good in my body and comfortable in my skin for the first time in my entire life. And then one day I was at my corporate job and I was sitting at my desk, and everybody had gone to lunch, and I was just kind of stewing in this. And I had this little inspiration come through of I needed to just be honest with myself and ask myself without expectations of what the outcome was, what is it what do I do next? And there was this point. So I went into meditation, and I just sat there at my desk, and I just went in, and I actually kind of just naturally dropped into my heart space. Mm-hmm. And I asked my heart, and this was before I knew human design, by the way. And I asked my heart, okay, what is going to happen if I stay or if I go? I need to know if I leave the relationship or if I stay in the relationship, what's best for me? And so I asked first, what if I go? What would happen? And I just felt this huge expansion and this excitement and drive and all of these things like come through this meditation. And it was quite shocking. I do have the cross of the unexpected, and I have the gate of initiation and shock. And so like this was a shocking revelation for me to see how excited and open to possibility in the world opening up to me if I left this relationship. And I was like, oh, okay, I see that. And then I asked the question, well, what if I just gave it my all and I left everything else behind and I gave everything into this relationship and just accepted that I'm in this relationship? I've already been in it for 13 years. Why am I not like fully committed into this? And when I asked that question, my entire body shrank and I went into an immediate deep depression from that. And that was the shocking revelation for myself of seeing the big difference of, do I stay or do I go?
Mm-hmm.
And I knew in that moment I had done so much work for myself that I loved myself too much to continue to stay in that relationship.
Mm.
And so I very bravely left. It was a process, of course. Some fights and whatnot ensued from it because there was no logical answer. I was told I was cheating. I was like all kinds of like different claims, which I wasn't. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? And he's like, there's no logical explanation for you wanting to leave this relationship. And I was like, my heart said no. And that was that. And so, fast forward years later, when I'm introduced to human design, I'm looking back.
What year, how long ago was that? What year was that?
So that was in 2011.
Okay. Fast forward how many years?
2016 is when I was introduced to
human design. Yeah, me too.
Okay, cool.
A lot of people, like I almost want to do a poll. Maybe I'll put a poll up that says, what year did you find human design? Because so many people I found, it was 2016 and then another big one at 2019. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I wonder if there was something in the cosmos.
Yeah, right?
But yeah, so 2016, fast forward, I had completely changed my life. I lived in Atlanta at this point. I was in Oklahoma at the beginning of this story. And so completely different life. I no longer worked in corporate. I became an entrepreneur. I was in the business world and I became a business coach. And so I just completely changed everything to where I don't have to work in an office anymore. I can just work wherever I have Wi-Fi, in a quiet space. Right. And so I had that point to really look back on of that's what it feels like, but it doesn't come up every day.
Right.
And so it's also this like, well, what do I do between the big yeses and nos? And so that became my really deep journey of finding out, how do I deal with it every day? How do I listen to my inner authority? And so I very much dove into human design to try to understand myself first.
Okay, so let's back up and tell me how you tell me the story of like the moment you found human design. Like this person told you, oh, you would like it. You looked at your chart, or they told you about your chart or whatever. Yeah. Like I want to know how you felt then.
The only thing she really told me, because she wasn't a human design reader, mm-hmm. She just helped her clients and stuff with it. Mm-hmm. And the only thing she really told me was, she goes, oh, you're a projector. You're not here to work.
Right.
And I went, yeah. What do you mean I'm not here to work? That's literally all I do is work. So I don't understand. Like, it was this whole entire mental trip of, what do I do with this? But there was also something very deeply resonant in my soul that said, yes,
That sense of relief, right?
Yes, it was a huge
I'm
sense of
not
relief
lazy.
and also a mind trip at the same time of like going through and learning more about human designers like that is deeply conditioned me to be a super slave in the world.
Yeah.
And that's how I
Yeah.
moved through life. And so then I began the deconditioning process. And the other thing with that is I also, once I understood, and within, what, a half hour or so, oh, we all have our inner authority. This is what my inner authority is like. And everybody has a unique inner authority. I knew from the get-go that I needed to coach my clients from their inner authority space. So not only was I on a quest to find my own way of describing my inner authority and understanding it and deeply resonating with it and living it, but I also needed to help the people that came to me do it as well. And so so much of my process has also been clearing the junk out of my own system with the deconditioning so that I can also hear other people's resonance of yes and no and what their correctness is to help guide them in that process.
Yeah. Okay. So then you started learning about human design on your own, or how did you go forward from that?
I very much learned on my own. I gathered all of the material that I possibly could. I have amassed a giant library of human design stuff because I'm just constantly collecting all this stuff. I also found Karen Curry Parker, who I deeply resonated with and loved her work as well, and could see the correlation between how she teaches and what Ra teaches. And also, we bring in a little bit of gene keys, and I see like there's the layers of the gates within the gene keys, and there's this beautiful synergy between all of them if we just look at them in this right way. But also, I have a very, very deep love and appreciation for Ra's work. And then my deep love and appreciation for Karen's work helped me to understand Ra's work better.
Okay. So you started working with clients with this right away. Like, tell me what that meant. Like, because you were a coach at this point, right? A business
Yes.
coach.
Yes.
And so what types did you have a certain niche of that or just general? Like, were there certain
No, I
niches you
found
tended to work in?
So I found a lot of generators and manifesting generators came to me because I have a business planner. I do a lot of planning. I'm a very organized person and
Mastering systems, right? We project.
mastering systems. I have gate 17 and my conscious Mercury. So a lot of it is here to, like, yes, it's opinions, but also it's very much organization.
It's a
And like,
logical channel, right? Or gate, right?
yes. And so like how to put everything in order. And before I did business coaching, I had a 2-year stint where I did virtual assistant work. And that was my little jumping point from going from corporate business world into being a business coach. I did virtual assistant stuff. And what I did is I learned and put together all of the back ends of people's multi-million-dollar businesses online. And
Mhm.
I learned how to transfer all of the business stuff that I knew from physical brick and mortar businesses into the online space by 3-5ing it out, by bumping around and figuring it out. And then realizing that I was driving myself into the ground with this work and I was severely burnt out. And I naturally transitioned into coaching before I even knew human design.
Right.
So, and I just had to do it. It was really funny because my husband at the time, I told him what I was doing, and he's brilliant at marketing. He's my mentor with all of this, all of the marketing and business and online stuff. And he trained me for 11 years that we were together. When I told him I was going to be a business coach, he looked at me and he goes, "You have no business being a business coach." And he's manifesting generator, emotional. And I just looked at him, I was like, watch me do it because I'm not going to let you I'm not going to let you tell me no.
Right.
But that was like the end of the conversation, was this watch me moment, because I'm not.
Now, this is your husband now, right?
No, so I have 2 ex-husbands. This is my second husband.
Okay.
So brilliant man. Like, I'm deeply, deeply grateful for the conditioning that he
Right.
gave me.
And it was that statement the impetus for him being the ex-husband? I'm just kidding.
I know. Not like, we still are very, very good friends. It was other circumstances.
I'm just teasing.
Negative of why we split, but
Yeah.
but yes, it was really funny because he didn't think I had any business being a business coach, because I myself had not built these big, giant, massive multi-million dollar businesses and all of this stuff. And I was like, but I did, because I was the one on the back end actually building the businesses.
Right.
And so that's what I started teaching people, is how to connect everything and create memberships and build and, create your systems in your businesses. And so then fast forward, I was probably about 6 months or so. I had been getting clients, or even less than that. I had been getting clients, I'd been coaching people, and our offices were across the hall from each other. And I had gotten off a coaching call and walked out of the office, and he walked out of his office at the same time. And he's like, I got to tell you something. It's like, what's that? He goes, you're better than I am at coaching. And it was in that moment that I knew that he realized that he was wrong for telling me that I couldn't do it, that I had no business doing that, and became my biggest advocate and fan after that.
Yeah.
So my willpower had kicked in before. Like, I knew it was the willpower of, I have to do this no matter what anybody else says. Even the closest person to me is telling me no, and I'm literally telling them where to shove it.
Yeah, that's funny, because all right, so I have a defined will, but that's not my authority. I'm emotional authority. I'm triple split. So all 3 of my channels operate completely independent of any other connection to anything. So I have the 26 connected to the 44, but my will center to the spleen. And then I have the 3955, which is the solar plexus to the root. And then I have the 1-8, which is the identity center to the throat. And so it's funny because, to really see the difference in how it is when you have somebody with a defined will in those situations, I feel like the correct response is, of course, if it's with your authority, is to say, watch me, and to prove it, right? We have that, I'm going to prove it to you kind of energy in that feels correct. But when somebody has an undefined will center and someone challenges them, when they attempt to prove it, that's coming from a place of amplification that feels icky a lot of times. And I'm wondering if you've noticed that.
Oh, absolutely. There's a really interesting thing when the willpower kicks in. It was described to me as being the general. And that's when, if the general comes out of my voice, that is my inner authority speaking. And so I try to pay attention to when the general comes out in that moment. And the general is not here to beat you down in competition, but if you buck up and want to have a competition, challenge accepted. And I will squish you. Because this is what has to happen. And it's not from a standpoint of, like, I'm trying to be better than you. It's this is what I have to do, whether you're in my way or not, I have to do it. And for those that don't have that strong willpower with that, in the amplification of it, it's this constant bucking up of the challenging of, like, I'm going to challenge you, you can't do this, like, or whatever that might be. and they amplify that challenge. But I've also found on the other side of it, for people who have a healthy, undefined will center, they feel incredibly empowered by the fact that I'm so solid in what I have to do.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, absolutely. And for a long time, in my experiment, I focused on, deconditioning the open centers. But what I realized is I had a very conditioned will center
Same here.
because it had been amplified always. And when I wasn't in my own correctness in the rest of me, that willful energy was pushing the wrong things. It wasn't really the heart of who I was. It wasn't really what I wanted. It wasn't really true. And so I was having all that amplified in this way that I didn't even know what my heart wanted. Right?
I'm so happy you brought this up because I've had the same experience with it. And I'd like to get into a little bit of the Biofield tuning because
Yes, I can't wait to go ahead. Go.
yeah, because this is directly correlated with what you were just talking about in having deep conditioning in a defined center.
Yeah.
And
so let's back up and start at the beginning of the biofield tuning story.
Sure.
That's not throwing you in.
Oh, no, not at all. Because it's one of my other key moments.
Right.
So, my husband at the time, my second husband at the time, we had just moved back to Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in the house, and he was coaching one of his clients. He's also a business consultant and coach. And he was on the conversation with a client, and a client had ran into a block in his business and a block within himself. And he recognized it really quickly. And he goes, "Oh, I'm feeling really blocked in this. I'm going to just go get it tuned out." And my husband was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Oh, well, whenever I come up with emotional blocks, instead of me going through years of therapy to try to figure out what it is and where it's at and all this stuff," he goes, "I just call up this lady in California. She does a session on me over the phone and it gets rid of it." And I was like, "Oh, this is fascinating." And he was also fascinated and was all about like, "Oh, tell me more." And so he ended up contacting this lady in California. Turns out the session it's a biofield tuning session. And he had a session with her across the house on the other side of the house. He was in the bedroom, just laying down, receiving all of the vibes and everything from the tuning fork. We're in Utah. She's in California. Okay. This happening. So it's remotely done.
Oh,
not always, but it's this particular one. This is how I was introduced to it. It was remotely done. And I'm across the house in the dining room, just typing away on my laptop, doing my work. And all of a sudden, about halfway through his session, I felt this huge energetic wave just bombard me and just like whoosh. And I went, "Whoop, there it is." And then I was like, wait, what was that? And it turns out he had a block of time in his childhood where it was probably about a 5-year span of his childhood where he had no memory of this. And all of the healers that he had gone to would show that he had this brick wall and none of them could penetrate through it. And he had no idea what was behind it. He had no idea what was all going on, but the tuning forks blasted through it. The blast of going through the giant brick wall that he had built was what I felt across the house. And from that, he had traumas that started to come up in his memory as he processed and moved out. And once they moved out, and it took a day or two for these to move out, and once they moved out, they were gone.
wow.
The emotional trigger from the trauma. So the memory of the trauma didn't go away, but the emotional trigger behind it went away. And he changed.
Right.
And he changed for the better. He became more peaceful within himself. He became not so anxious and whatnot. And he just, was really chill and accepting of different things, and his reactions to things changed. And I was like, this is incredibly fascinating to me. And I wonder what would happen if I got it done. But I'm a very tactile person, and so I wanted to experience it in person. I found a lady here in Salt Lake, and I went for a session in person. And during the session, things came up, and I felt vibrations running through my body in ways that I had never experienced before.
Right.
And the best word I can describe anything with biofield tuning is profound, because it's such a deep shift that there's hardly words for it. And so it takes a little bit for these words to start forming. But during this session, I had just incredible, intense energy coming through. It was loving. It was beautiful. My body was like kind of jarred through it, but also very relaxed and peaceful. And it felt amazing. But what happens in a biofield tuning session is that the tuning fork combs through your aura. So the practitioner takes the tuning fork, combs through your aura, and your aura actually has the timeline of your life in it, like the tree rings on a tree.
Oh.
And
Okay.
so your outer edge of your aura, 5 to 6 feet out, represents birth and gestation. And the memories that are there. So if you had a traumatic birth, that memory of that traumatic birth is in your aura. And the tuning fork will hit up against it, and your body will actually have a reaction and go, oh, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like me. And it will start to shift it. And it works with the tuning fork, and your body starts to align with who you are without that trauma. And it moves the trauma out. The tuning fork shows your body how to move it out.
Wow. So my mind is right away, like I'm thinking about things like I have a daughter who is a manifestor, and she was a C-section. So that's a traumatic birth, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, she's a cross of tension manifestor, right? With
Yeah.
defined will. And she's got this big, like they say, this, like, it's not any bigger, but it's like this powerful, like repelling or closed repelling aura. So if the outer layer of that is trauma,
Yes.
what does that feel like to other people when she enters their hugging, embracing aura, or when someone penetrates that?
Yeah.
Like I have to wonder if that is
And if they have the same trauma, that's when trauma bonds start forming.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Right.
But the emotional reaction that you have to your trauma is the trigger. And so if you no longer have the emotional attachment to the trauma, you can actually look at it from different perspectives. So instead of it being oh, I was so wronged in all of this, it's like, oh, wait a second, that must have been really tough on my mom. I can have sympathy for myself of like, oh, I had no problem. Like, it wasn't my fault that I was a C-section baby, things like that.
She never consciously thinks about it in her case, but yeah, the subconscious, right?
Yeah. So there's all kinds of things that happen within that. One of the things, I personally was a colicky baby. And the first, usually colicky babies are colicky for about the first 6 months of life. And so in one of my sessions, not my first one, but in one of my sessions.
Still colicky at 23.
Okay. So that's an interesting,
I never thought of it that way, but as you're saying it, I'm thinking, yeah, she's still kind of colicky.
very lactose intolerant, right? And I personally, as my tuner was going through this layer that wanted to come up during this session, I realized that it continued longer than 6 months. And the energy that I was feeling from that was me as a baby could not get the nutrients and the care that my body deeply, deeply needed from the people, from my parents, and, from the people who were the ones who were supposed to give me that. There was a sense of betrayal in that, in my system. And, and through that process of working through it, I'm like, oh, I never even thought about how hard it was on my mom, how traumatizing it was on her to have her first child not be able to really eat anything, even though she wanted to give me food and nurturing and substance and all of this stuff, and my body wouldn't allow her to give it to her. But I in my body felt betrayed that the people that are supposed to give me nutrients couldn't do it. And so I had to become self-independent to give it to myself. And so, and it turned out after that session, I called my mom up and I was like, so what really happened during that time? And she immediately, when I got on the phone with her, she immediately starts like releasing from her body. And she's like, what are you doing to me? I was like, I'm in Utah. She's in Texas. Okay.
Right.
She's like, what are you doing to me? I was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm curious about what happened from your perspective at this time.
Right.
And what had happened for her is she silently suffered for 3 years. I was a colicky baby for 3 years, which I had no idea that was the case. And it was her silent secret. And because she felt like nobody understood, nobody could help her, she just silently dealt with it and suffered from it. And so that secret that traumatic secret she had held in her body was being released from her chest, from around her heart. And as I was talking to her, because I had released it in the tuning session. And so by me healing myself, I also helped heal her. So the tuning forks are very good at uncovering secrets.
Oh, wow. Now, do you know your mom's design?
Yes, my mom is a sacral manifesting generator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. So going back to the first tuning session that I had, after the session, I was in quite a daze because there were things that came up in my timeline of my life that were significant things. Mostly my first husband, I have people that ask me, they're like, do you have daddy issues? Like I have healers and stuff. I'm like, no, I don't have daddy issues. I have ex-husband issues. But the first one, this is the one that I had left that marriage because my heart told me to. And, it came up in my Biofield Tuning and had started to move things out. And as I was driving home, I got stuck in rush hour traffic. I didn't care because I'm just deeply, deeply processing the changes of what the heck just happened to me.
Right.
And so I was halfway home and all of a sudden I felt my heart balloon out. It was almost like it exploded out, but it was this solidness that just came out. It wasn't a brick wall, but it was solid. And it's almost like I'm looking at it as I'm driving and going, what is happening? And the only word that I could really find to describe what I felt was regal. Because it was this, like my chest was like puffing up and getting strong and regal feeling. I was like, oh, this is new. And also there was a sassiness that started to come in through my thought process behind it. And I was like, oh, I remember you. This is my sassy teenage self before I got married the first time. And it was starting to come back online. And once I got home, my husband at the time, I walked in the door and he looked at me and he goes, oh, there you are. I was like, oh, by the way, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth because all I feel is sassy.
Right.
And so this began this journey of uncovering what the heck is going on here. And it took about 3 or 4 sessions of integrating this stuff. And it took some time because it was very powerful energy that was coming online. This. And the last big heart session that I had, so there's 3 or 4 of them that are really focused on my heart center. The last really big one that came through, all of a sudden, I felt my entire heart. So I have the ego to the G center, the will to the G, through the 2551. And so that channel of initiation. So, and I say this because what happened is all of a sudden I felt my heart literally come online. And I felt what it felt like to actually have a motorized heart, have a motorized G center. So people talk about how with manifestors and manifesting generators, how there's that motor to the throat.
Right.
They have a motorized throat center because they have that motor behind it powering it.
Right. And to clarify to people, there are certain centers that are considered motors in the chart, and they're the sacral, the root center, the heart or will center, whatever you want to call it. Or the ego, and sometimes it's called the resource center in quantum human design, and has more names than anything. And then the this emotional solar plexus. So just to clarify, those are the motors to the throat energy you're talking about.
Yes. And I felt the motor of the will center turn on and power my G center. And it was really funny because the feedback that I got from other people around me was this, whoa, I'm very much overpowering them with the penetration of the G center through their body. Because all of a sudden it was completely turned on and powering through their aura. And it was very intense, and sometimes mostly too intense for a lot of people because I'm just like drilling in the love.
I'm going to just take a second and kind of dissect that a little bit for people who are not understanding, that the projector, the way the projector aura works is it kind of penetrates the G center of the other. So if you're really having this motor to the identity center, with G center of you, that's really what's composing the energy in your aura, that is really probing into the other. And so I'm wondering how that feels in connection, because as a projector, when we really connect and we really see the other, and we guide their energy by knowing them.
Yes.
When you have this really profound energy of knowing yourself, like how did that shift those interactions, like as a coach or just in relationship?
So after that tuning session, that last one, I sat on my front porch and I felt my entire heart space come online. And as I sat there, it's just huge universal love energy flowing through me. And then my heart really started to speak to me. And it told me, this is what it feels like to unconditionally love yourself. And when you unconditionally love yourself in this way, this is for you. Nobody can take this from you. You can now give from the overflow of your cup, from the saucer, because it's on. And I'm just crying and bawling at the beauty of what my heart is telling me very loud and clearly, louder than I've ever heard it before. And what started happening is I will go, so my heart's humming away, talking to me all the time. And I like go to the grocery store. I'll just like be in line somewhere. and I'll feel it, and I'll feel this this little, because it's a vibration with it.
Right.
And then I feel other people's hearts go. It's like, oh, we're talking heart to heart. This is fascinating. And so my heart started talking to other people's hearts, and other people's hearts, people who were open to it, started talking back. And it became this whole other language that I had to learn of heart language in communication with the other person.
So I want to back up a little bit, because I'm realizing as we're talking here that I know what you're talking about when you talk about tuning forks and this, but there might be people listening who are like, what the heck are you talking about? Really?
Yep, I get it.
Really probably should have went there a lot sooner, but I'm wondering if you can explain to us what a tuning fork is and how it works.
Well, I
And
just so happen to have them here.
awesome. Great. So if you're watching on YouTube or in my Facebook group, or even Spotify now has the little videos, but if you're, she's going to show them to us, but kind of for those people listening on the podcast, if you can kind of explain it.
Yes. So there are two different types of tuning forks, and I'll show it on the video.
Okay.
One is a normal, I'll just kind of bring it here on the black. A normal tuning fork. This is an unweighted tuning fork. This is a weighted tuning fork. These little balls at the end are the weights. So
Okay.
weighted, unweighted, no balls at the end.
The one has two ends that stick up, and the other has two ends with like two little circles on the end. Okay.
Yes. And so the one that has the circles on the end is for use on the body. And when I strike it, you really can't hear it, but you can see it vibrating.
Right.
So if I stop it, you can see that it's clear. And then when I activate it, it's blurry because it's vibrating back and forth.
Okay.
And so this is, I can use it all over my body, and I do all of the time with this. And the other one is the one that you can actually hear, and I will strike it so everybody can hear it, and we'll just like have a moment to hear this. I'm going to switch my sound so we can hear it through Zoom. So I might sound a little different, a little bit farther away, but I'll strike it again. Just breathe it in. It's a very beautiful sound that the body will deeply resonate with.
Yeah, I felt that.
Yeah. So you probably felt it. So I felt it with you more in your throat.
I felt it kind of here.
Okay. Yeah. So in it, it's trying to come. It might be that 1/8 channel. It just has some blockage to like move out.
I feel like I felt it a little bit in my root as well.
Very nice. So these spaces, and it'll activate in different ways. I learned Biofield Tuning from the creator. Her name is Eileen McCusick. And one of the things that really struck me is that she talks about how the tuning forks reset you back to factory settings. And I went, oh, okay, tell me more about that. Because in human design, in deeper human design training, in the PHS information, Ra talks about how there's the color, base, and tone, or the color, tone, and base, and the base is the very bottom. And the only way that anything can actually get to the base level of our energy is through vibration, sound and vibration. So I realized that the tuning forks is the only thing that can really, unless you're following your strategy and authority and has like done it for years, we bring in the tuning forks, and the tuning forks can get to the root of everything and reset you back to factory settings at a cellular level.
You say the only thing is the tuning forks. What about other like sound healing type of modalities? Like I've got my little.
It's the only thing that I've found, I should say. I love the little I don't even know what those are
I don't
called.
know. They're the little clanging cymbal bells. I don't know what they're
Clanging
called, but
bells.
they're connected, and I use them just to kind of clear out.
I use it to clear out energy too. I love them. I love singing bowls. I love drums. Like this, I have a shamanic drum that I will use, but I find that they are used for very specific things.
Okay.
The tuning forks work in a dramatically different way from all the other sound therapy modalities that I've come across. They all have their own beautiful healing ways that they do things. The tuning forks are very specific. And I have my sound healing friends come over and they're like, oh, it's sound therapy, like cool stuff. And then they get on the table and try it and they're like, what is happening? What is going on? Like, welcome to the world of tuning forks.
I
Because
can't wait to try this. It sounds really cool.
yes, it's amazing work. And so what I realized through these learnings is that my heart had the most conditioning on it.
Mm.
And I had reset it back to factory settings, how it should be through all the deconditioning. And it took tuning forks through my first 7-year deconditioning process to help me. And so one of the things I also realized that in our deconditioning process, if you're starting to learn how to follow your inner authority, it'll actually guide you to things that will help enhance and really bring forward and move you forward in a different way. So it's, yes, strategy and authority is key, but it'll guide you to tools that will help you enhance it even more.
Yeah, that sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
So how long ago did you find
About 4 years ago is when I
Okay.
found the tuning forks, and
when did you
I have
start
not
using as a practitioner? When did you start using them as a practitioner?
about 3 years ago. So I knew very quickly.
Yeah.
So it was like in the middle of all the COVID stuff, but I knew very quickly that this was the one healing modality that actually called to me to get a certification in so that I could actually practice it for people. Because going back to the original part of my story, when I first was introduced to human design, I knew in my core that I had to coach people using their strategy and authority. And then to realize that the tuning forks can help in our deconditioning process.
Right.
And Kathy, I can't even tell you how many people have come to me to do tuning fork work and their inner authority is turned on right there on the table.
Huh.
And I have generators that have never felt their sacral response. And all of a sudden they're like, what is this? What? And like, that's almost all they can do because it's like, it's on.
Yeah.
It's so exciting for them. And, and then there's the whole spiritual aspect of it as well. So there's a whole I'm deeply spiritual in everything as well. And there's people's intuitive gifts also come online from the tuning sessions, which is an incredible enhancement to people's lives. Like all of a sudden people can start hearing their spirit guides. And, like for me, it's the little with my heart. And I start, interpreting the world differently. And then people are starting to interpret the world differently on a vibrational level, more in alignment with how we're supposed to operate as humans.
Yeah.
And it's just the most fascinating thing to see the combination of the mechanics of how our body is supposed to work according to our design. And then we start really deconditioning out of it and what it really looks like.
I am just sitting here, for those who aren't watching this, I'm just sitting here and smiling, and I'm realizing that part of it is I'm sitting here thinking, oh, I want to do this. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I do. I do want to experience the tuning forks, but I'm sitting here thinking, I want to learn how to use these. I want to do these things. And what I've just realized is I'm feeling your heart, and I'm even with my defined will and my defined identity, I'm feeling your heart, your enthusiasm, all of these things, and it's so contagious, right? It's so like juicy, and I just want part of it, and it makes me yeah, and so it's just really neat to watch that authority of yours in the way it guides people. Like, it's very high vibe, right? Yeah, and so I love the way I'm feeling right now, even without the tuning forks, just from the energy that I'm getting from you, right? It's really cool. It's really
I
cool
love
to sit here
I
and
love that you can feel that.
yeah. And I'm wondering, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, wow, I wonder if you can get all the stuff out of my open. I have a completely open ajna, and I have undefined head with just I have the hanging gate 64. So it's lots of questions. I've gotten good about just putting the questions out there. And so my question, though, that I have, and I'm not attached to the answer, is can you make space in my open ajna? Because I have so much in there now. Like I always feel like it's like this clown car, right? I'm just more and more and more in there, and who knows what clown's going to come out, whatever you pull out of there, or whatever. But sometimes I feel like intuitively, um, in the past, I have not been open or able to hear my spirit guides and my intuition as clearly because there's so much mental stuff in there.
I completely understand. And there is one tuning fork that I will bring in here in just a moment. And we'll see how that can shift in just a few strikes. And before I do that, I do want to explain that one of the things that I've experienced in receiving the tuning fork work and then also doing the tuning fork work on other people, because I receive benefit every time that I do a tuning session on somebody. I have such a deep, profound silence and peace inside of me that I never even knew was possible, because everything is just calm inside of my body because of the harmony that the tuning forks have brought into my life. And so just with that, if anything is off kilter in my life, or if I feel anxieties or anything from other people, I feel it and go, oh, I identify what that is immediately. And like, I can't always be like, can we shift that? Can I get out my tuning forks? But sometimes I do. And you mentioned Nova mentioning me in her interview. And I want to give a little props to Nova, because for years, I had this question in my mind of, okay, if manifestors initiate and ego projectors also initiate, there's got to be a difference in the initiation because it's manifestors versus projectors. What's the difference in the initiation? What is this? Like, if we both initiate, what kind of initiation is this? Like, what is it? And Nova's the only one that had an answer for me. And she goes, oh, I feel this very deeply. She goes, manifestors initiate new ideas, new energy into the world. Ego projectors initiates the path for people to go in.
And that's really profound, but I would add another layer, and ask you to tell me whether this resonates, since you clearly are the ego projector and I am not. The ego projector initiates when there is an invitation.
That as well.
Whereas the manifester sometimes creates the path for the invitation, like kind of is often just the disruption, even that
right?
it's the path for the need for anything to change, right? So I think both have their difficulties and their gifts, but I feel like they're I recently was writing up a whole thing about the different authorities and sitting with the nuances of the ego projected projector and the ego manifestor and the self projected projector and the environmental project, the mental projector with the environment. Those like more obscure authorities really took me so much time. It's like I haven't even finished the whole thing I'm doing because and then I have to wait for emotional clarity to say, is this really what? So I'd love to, when we have time, see what your thoughts are and what I wrote about that. But yeah, I think it's really a profound thing when you are speaking from the heart of who you are as a projector. You really have to know that the invitation starts inside yourself. And I think that's true for all projectors. The invitation comes from us, right? Mm-hmm. First and foremost. Now, for other people to invite us into something, yes, there needs to be that energetic opening of an invitation. And some people say a formal invitation. I don't get it caught up on semantics. I just trust that I'll know. I'm not going to make a set of rules that says this is what makes it real. I will know because the invitation starts with me. And I know, I recognize my own energy to know if that feels like it's the right thing to even consider. And honestly, I'm getting a little bit on a tangent here, but honestly, with this whole thing of, yes, the invitation needs to have recognition, but that still needs to have you decide if you're accepting it with your authority. It's not like we just go, oh, it was an invitation and they recognize me, and then that means it's a yes, right? So then knowing at the heart of who you are, but if you don't recognize yourself, you don't know, you're going to just take every invitation that comes along, right?
Right.
So, yeah. And so this is just such a beautiful story of how you really learned to recognize your own heart. And I kept thinking about how in the last few years, I've heard a lot about like heart math and heart coherence meditations and a lot of these things. And I know they're helpful for everyone, whether they have a defined heart and ego or not. But I would imagine for you, they're like essential, right? When you have that as your authority.
Yeah. And it's very important and also fascinating to understand how to drop from your mind into your heart, especially for me, with it being my inner authority. But once my ego and my heart and all of this, this heart chakra stuff all got reset back to factory settings and turned online, I literally have no choice. And then we go back to Ra's teachings of no choice. And I want to make a little bit of clarity on that because a lot of people are very turned off by the idea of no choice. And I'd like the clarity around that is what exactly is no choice? And what I have discovered with it is that we don't have a choice as to what our inner authority says yes and no to. But we do have the choice of whether or not we're going to follow it. We always have that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And we can make a choice of, oh, that my inner authority said yes, but my brain is saying no, and I'm not going to do it. You have the choice to say no to it.
Right.
Not do it. But also, you can't control what your inner authority says yes and no to. That's your guidance and your connection up with the divine flow of the universe. You have the choice to follow it or not.
Yeah.
It's free will.
Yeah, I think that's the part that turns me off and a lot of people is it makes it sound like we don't have free will because we have the choice to just throw everything down and not even look at human design again, right? And just go do whatever, but and yeah, I think that's a really good way to explain it.
Yeah. And since my heart came online through all of this, if it says yes and my brain and everything else is like, no, thank you, I get chewed out. My heart just like, how dare you question me? We are doing this. I'm like, Oh, my bad, girl. My bad. We'll do it. And I have to like relinquish into it. I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing this because I literally have no choice or I'm going to get chewed out.
Right?
And be very unhappy in here. And I'm not willing to do that to myself anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice because you love yourself too much.
Love myself too much to torture myself
Do
in
you
those.
think you loved yourself before?
Um, I did, but it was really interesting to watch the ebbs and flows of it come in and out because it would be strong and then it would really subside and then it would kind of pop up a lot.
Hmm.
But then it would be dampered back down and I didn't understand why until after I went through the deconditioning that the tuning fork session allowed me to go through because I saw the pattern in my life of when I shut my heart down because of other people's reactions to my big love.
Yes.
And I harmonized that in my aura, in my timeline, to where now if people feel like my big love is too much for them, I can say, cool, I see that I'm pointing my G center directly at you. Let me just turn, and then you can just like be.
Right?
But I'm not shutting this down.
Yeah, that's funny because I always think of my pointy, like my penetrating aura kind of as like my pointy thing. And I'm often like, oh yeah, that's because they don't know me yet. And I'm pointing my aura at them. Let me turn, let me look over here. Like it's a lot for people to take in, especially when we have a defined will.
Yes.
Um, and even to some extent, like, other definition can impact that too. When it's, we have something defined that someone else doesn't feel, that can be a lot for people to experience. Um, so yeah, but I love the way you talk. Like, let me just like turn this way.
I'll just turn it to where it's
Right?
not penetrating through you. And it's really funny though, because since it's really turned on, it's enhanced my biofield tuning sessions and my coaching sessions that I'm able to give people. Because what happens is, yes, it'll penetrate through, but like in a biofield tuning session, it's not penetrating through them. It creates a big bubble of safety for them to have their shift in experience. And it's like wrapping them in unconditional love because that's what my heart is designed to do. My only gate in my G center is the 25, which is unconditional universal love. And that's the love that I emit out. And so it literally like creates this big bubbly blanket of yummy goodness around them. I'm not doing it consciously. I can do it consciously, but I just show up and it happens. And so I don't have to think about it. And people are like, I felt so loved and safe during that. And so that safety is so important for me because if you don't feel safe to do your healing work and to go through and dig through your timeline and dig through this stuff that is conditioning, because conditioning a lot of times is traumas
Yeah.
in the system. And
Right.
however that is, either it's a trauma from somebody else or a self-inflicted trauma because of how we've been trained. Some of my heart shut down was self-inflicted and some of it was not.
And I think the word conditioning gets kind of a bad rap too, because conditioning is, any knowledge that comes from outside of us is conditioning, right? And we don't want to not have knowledge that comes from outside of us. That's what we're here to experience life and learn things. And so conditioning is only bad when we confuse it with who we are, right?
Yes.
So when we learn from it and we can use it as wisdom, then it's great. And because we probably already don't have time for this, but I'm just wondering if you could just go back to like when you're doing stuff with the tuning forks, like for example, when I talked about my ajna and you said, oh, is it different tuning forks for different things or is it?
So they talk to me. Just,
Okay.
it's one of the intuitive things that comes through. The tuning fork that I struck earlier, and I'll strike it again, is the 174 hertz, just for those who want the reference. And I'll show you the sound of that again. Let me. That particular tuning fork really works through the issues. That's my workhorse. I have one that is a Clydesdale horse in a sense. That one's really intense. I can ring that one for you. It's the 144 hertz. It cuts through things like a hot knife through butter, and it can be very intense. And I usually don't use it the first time on somebody if it's their first.
Oh, that's interesting because I didn't feel that one as much when you did the other one, which was the one you had done before. This time I really felt like I felt it in my whole head.
Wow.
But the second one, when you just did the one you called the Clydesdale, I felt like I just felt that in my head, like in my crown chakra, maybe. Or maybe not even so much that, like, it was a more subtle thing to me, which is interesting when you say that it's like a more intense one. So,
well, usually, so the tuning forks will talk to me on what intensity you need. And when it's the first time that you've really heard them, the 174 is more likely to resonate because that's the one that really gets in there first. And then I will bring in the 144 if we're working on really deep stuff that you're ready to release. So if you're not ready to release it, it's not going to affect you as much. The other one that I would like to ring for you is the 222 hertz, which is angel numbers and all this. But this is a being fork. The other two that I just showed you are working forks or really dig in. This one is a being fork that helps to settle everything and just allows you to and reminds you what it's like to be in your body. All right, I chose that one for you because that one really can help quiet the mind.
yeah, I realized even the first time you did it, I was still thinking about what it felt like instead of just feeling it, right?
Yeah.
And then I found that where I was really feeling it was in my root.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So very cool. So I could talk about this forever, but if people want to work with you on this, you do this, do you do this remotely also or just in person?
Nope, I do it remotely. All of my sessions are remotely.
And is that the main work you're doing now, is the biofield tuning, or are you doing other stuff as well?
So I am a projector. I'm an entrepreneur. I have all kinds of things going on. But my main thing that I do is business coaching. And I help people figure out what system is right for them in their business. And if they have blocks around that, we can tune it out.
Wow.
And I also have this other side of my business, which is the tuning stuff where people come to me just for tuning sessions. And so I'm open to however they need, whatever work that they need for themselves, they can come to me for that. And then, I also have business partners that I do other things with as well. But these are the two main things that I do personally.
And what's the best way for people to connect with you?
My main website is NatalieMarieCollins.com. Marie is spelled M-A-R-I-E.
M-A-R-I-E. Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought you were saying Murray.
I know that's why I have to spell it every time. I don't understand why.
That's
That is a common issue.
It's funny because I always have to say, when I spell my last name, I usually say it's B as in boy, O-C-H, because for some reason, if I just say B-O-C-H, a lot of people think I've said V-O-C-H. I don't know why, but anyway, it's a thing. So every week we share stories of how my guests have come to understand themselves in a more loving and empowering way through the lens of human design. How you think and speak about yourself matters. Human design can show you the reframe of not only your own story, but the story you tell yourself about your relationships. If you're ready to start living a better story, I'd love to help guide you through the process of fully embodying who you came here to be. I invite you to check out my website at kathybashanko.com, where you can run your free human design chart and find all the ways to connect with me directly. And don't forget to follow Real Human Design Stories on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. And please take a moment and give me a 5-star review. Thanks so much, Natalie. This has been really great to chat with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Peace out, everybody.